And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternovich.
Well, hey there, listener, and welcome back to the Hacking Engagement Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And last Friday, I was getting ready to enjoy the weekend, just set sail off into a weekend, a adolescent-free weekend of just being a person. And I wanted to interview this really together young teacher in my building. Her name is Quin Thomas. She teaches right down the hall. So I bring her down to my room on Friday, right after school, Friday, and we start talking about some of her views on education, some of the tools that she uses in education. And believe it or not, I'm not pulling your leg here. As soon as she left, I dove in to learning about what she talked about. And she's talking about Google Maps and using Google Maps in class. When I thought about this, I thought about I like to do geography activities in class. It puts things in context. It gives kids a sense of perspective. But a lot of times I'm just doing the old school, find the Khyber Pass on this paper map. With Google Maps, man, you go there. You go to these places. So it makes these places come to life. It puts your kids on a journey. And that's what I'm all about, man. You talk about engaging, get your kids to see, get your kids to experience the places that you're talking about. And you might have to use a Google Map or a Google Earth or a My Maps, and that's what Quin's going to talk about in this episode. So promise me you'll head on over to my show notes at jamesallensturdivant.com, and I'll have a link there to an assignment that we just did on Google Maps. I'll also have a couple of screenshots of some Google Maps that the kids manufactured. Buckle up. You are going to love this episode. You hear me? You're going to love it. Hey, so get this, listener. My publisher contacts me and says, I love the way Hacking Engagement is selling. How about doing 50 more? I was all over it like a cheap suit. So the name of the book is Hacking Engagement Again, 50 Teacher Tools That Will Make Students Love Your Class. And it's going to be available on Amazon's virtual shelves in the late summer of 2017. In the meantime, if you're looking for more teacher empowerment resources, as always, visit hacklearning.org. Now let's get back to the solutions part of the Hacking Engagement Podcast. Okay, so here we are in the Room 111 studios, and it's Friday afternoon. Quin Thomas, Friday. Isn't it nice to be done at the end of the week?
2:23 and we're done for the weekend.
That's not bad, man. It's another reason to be a teacher. What can we say? So here's the deal. I have this young teacher down the hall from me, second year, right? Mm-hmm. Her name's Quin Thomas. She's sitting right beside me, if you haven't guessed that already. I use the word young teacher, and some of you might hear that and think I'm being patronizing. I'm not. There's a reason I'm calling her a young teacher, and it's not because she's inexperienced by any stretch of the imagination. Quin, I consider you one of my mentors.
Oh, get out.
Because when I walk down to Quin's class, what you see is student engagement. You see students that are just on fire, and they're deeply engaged in her lesson plan, and she does some extremely creative things. So I always say that I like to take people under the age of 30 as my mentors, and so I consider her one of them. So I'm not talking about her being a young teacher for patronizing reasons. Here's why I'm talking about you being a young teacher. Because it wasn't that long ago that you were a high school student. Mm-hmm. What year did you graduate from high school?
2011.
So not that long ago, but I'm going to wager that school is done differently than it was even when you were a high school student. I know I teach differently. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, the first big difference has to just be like technology, and so what teachers are doing with that. I didn't get my first laptop until my freshman year of college, so that was not a thing at all in high school. And now, at least at Big Walnut, every freshman has a Chromebook in front of them and knows how to use it. And so that opens up a lot of doors for teachers to do different things.
Let me just ask you something about that. When you were in high school, you probably, as a student, because I have a son your age, witnessed the transition from everybody being freaked out about kids using their phones during class time to finally today embracing kids using their phones during class time. Did most teachers look at a phone or technology as a distraction back then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of my friends, Rachel, actually got suspended for a few days for texting her mother. It was a whole thing. So, yeah, I mean... I don't know
why we fear things like this. I mean, this is this amazing tool of learning that were in kids' hands, and we were upset by the idea that they might text a buddy.
Yeah, I think it's like the competition for their attention.
Yeah.
That we were like threatened by the phone that was so clearly more interesting than we were.
Yeah.
And so we thought there's no way we can compete with it, so we just have to ban it altogether.
So one of your first observations is, when it comes to technology, just since you've been in high school, we've come light years.
Oh, yeah. If you were looking at the world, you're looking at a paper map. That's flat on your desk.
Right.
So now we're looking at a Google Map or Google Earth, and the kids are able to explore it all on their own, and it's always up to date, and it's more like hands-on. I mean, literally, they're using their touch screens to, like, surf around and zoom in on things.
Yeah. Where it used to be, you just kind of looked at a book, you looked at a picture, and that was kind of neat. Now you actually can drop the person into Google Map and they can actually be there at the ground level with a panoramic view.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, see the people around them, see the buildings, see how congested some areas are and how just empty others are. I feel like it brings so much more to the table. The kids are way more engaged. They're way more connected.
So in other words, we're no longer the keepers of the knowledge. Like, I mean, I think teachers had this, like, exalted place back in the day. Like, they really know it all, when really every answer is just a couple clicks away, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I feel like that's one of the things that I actually, as a teacher, find exciting about where education is headed, is that I don't have to be an expert on everything anymore.
Right.
With technology, the kids have access to actual experts. I don't have to pretend that I know every single thing. And so, kids are now taking more charge of their own education and not just sitting there consuming whatever I know and whatever the one textbook we have in class says, but instead they can do their own research.
And I can tell you as an older teacher that it's considered a threat by some teachers, that they aren't in that exalted position, that they have to accept the fact that those kids can easily gain access to the knowledge that you used to kind of have to yourself.
Yeah, be the holder of. I think maybe teachers need to think of themselves more as guides then, in some way, especially with technology, that now we can guide them to finding the good sources and how do we access experts and how do you pull from multiple places to do research instead of just, let go of that expert, like I'm the only one that knows anything, kind of.
Well, here's another thing I love about Quin is, Quin she came to our school last year, and pretty early on, it was pretty clear that you were really having a lot of fun. That you were really enjoying yourself. Now, I'm one of these guys, I could retire, but I'm reluctant to because such neat things are happening in education. You're at the beginning of your career, second year. You have to look forward with a lot of excitement. What do you see? Where's this headed? Where's all this headed? What's your view?
I just feel like there's going to be more and more ed tools coming out to make it easier for kids to access different things. I see more of the pulling up on the smart board classrooms in other parts of the world, and we're communicating with them face to face, and kids just taking a lot more responsibility for their education.
Do you think that a big part of that might be this whole concept of the 7-period day? The physical classroom is probably going to go out the window.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's part of the reason why teachers feel threatened is because of the idea of the teacher being in the front of the room and all the students sitting at their desk, listening for 45 minutes. It has to go away. I mean, it can't be the way we continue to do things. It's a very industrial way of doing things.
That's a good word. I say that all the time. I like that.
Yeah, and so hopefully into the future, it'll be more of kids there's maybe an overarching subject area they're looking at, but they have more control and more choice.
Now you're pretty close to a lot of students, and you have great relationships with kids. What do you hear them say about something they don't like about the way school is done?
That they don't like how early it starts.
Yes. You talk about industrial model. There it is, right there. I mean, it's not natural for a 16-year-old kid to get up at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're old, you just kind of wake up at 6 in the morning, even though you don't want to.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's like getting up and getting here at 7:30 seems totally unnatural. What about like attention span? What do you see with kids and their ability to focus and their ability? That's because you hear that a lot from teachers.
Yeah, maybe it's because I can relate a little bit. I have a hard time doing any one thing for too long. But yeah, I think it just needs to be engaging. Kids aren't willing to sit there and read a textbook for, an hour, read 100 pages of a textbook. They need different types of media or something that has, some visual and audio. Especially if it's going to be something they're not actually interested in. Yeah. The mode you're using to provide that information then at least has to interest them.
And when you start talking about things that they're not interested in, I mean, that's probably a lot of what we teach in every class.
Yeah.
It's not like my students are exceptionally interested in oracle bones from ancient China as they walk in.
Yeah.
My challenge is to make them such. It's not like, oh, man, if I could just figure out this oracle bone thing, man, I'm in business. Okay, now we've talked about maybe where education is headed and why you're excited to be in it, why I'm reluctant to leave it. But we talked a little bit about Google. I'm going to tell you something as a teacher. Did you have Google Classroom as a high school student?
No.
I just started using Google Classroom maybe 3 years ago. Absolutely revolutionized the way I teach. And Google Classroom is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Google.
Oh, yeah. Google has so many tools you can use.
So talk about some.
I mean, Google is just nice because it's so user-friendly, so no matter what you're doing, the kids already have a login, so there's no wasting time with whatever it is, Nearpod or whatever else it is that kids can make a login and then get into your classroom. They know how it works. Yeah. And also that everything is automatically saved for them. Yes. And so anything they do is automatically, like, every few seconds saved.
Goes with them?
Drive. Yeah, it goes with them, no matter what Chromebook they're using or whatever. But yeah, it has a lot of tools. So one of them I used, just this past week, I used Google Earth to do latitude and longitude. Right. And they were I gave them coordinates and they would find the country, and then at the end they solved a riddle. And another one we did is where they were looking at satellites and again with coordinates, and they would look around at what the view for different satellites. And that was really cool for them to kind of get an idea of what satellites see.
Yeah, and I stole this assignment from Quin. I stole it from her and used it in my class. And the thing that was so interesting was the worksheet itself was a little older, but all I said was, just go ahead and use your resources. That was magical for me. Because all of a sudden, these kids are not relying on some daggone textbook that was written in the 20th century, but they are just saying, okay, here's a problem. I have to figure it out on my own. And what my kids were doing, and probably your kids were doing the same thing, is they were just typing in 30 north, 20 east, and then bam, that Google map was popping right up. They were just putting that in the search bar. And I only had to tell them once. And I didn't have to tell a lot of them. They figured it out on their own. It was really magical. So let's go with this Google Maps thing. How else do you use them?
So something with world history, which is what I spend half my day teaching, is we talk about a lot of different faraway places with kids. Some of them have never heard of it. Some of them never heard of it. Most of them could not say the continent. Right? They have no idea. And so I try to work geography into most of my units. And last year, even before I really had a good grasp on Google and all of its tools, I would just do the paper maps. Yeah. And, they label them, they color them, whatever. But the kids had no connection to that. They weren't connecting it with their own lives. It didn't mean anything to them. They weren't connecting it with like prior units or between events. They're just coloring something and enjoying that they get to use colored pencils for once. So Google Maps changed that. And one example of that is with my Cold War unit. So if you go into Google Maps, just like you would if you're trying to navigate to a store or your doctor's appointment or whatever, if you click on the menu, there's a drop down, and there's a couple things there that are actually interesting. One of them is your timeline, which I haven't used this in class, but you might want to check it out. It's very interesting. If you click on that, and then it has like month, day, year, and you can put in any day that you've since like allowed Google to have access to your location, which we all have because we all use our phones. So like get us places, and it'll show you on the map everywhere you went that day, and it'll list all the places you went.
I had no idea about that.
Oh my gosh. So like when just the other day I was looking at it and I pulled up like April 13th, 2017. And it showed that I went to work at this time at Big Walnut, and then I went to Marcella's for dinner, and it showed all the walks I made on my way home from dinner. It shows what time I got home.
Yes.
And then, boom, next day. It shows that I drove to Big Walnut for work, that I did Arch City for dinner. Apparently I'm spending way too much
Does it
money
make
on
like
dinner.
a little map too? Or just
yeah.
So, okay, you got some kids. Instead of going, what did you do for summer vacation? They can map it out.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I've never done that.
It is so interesting.
So the kids were just like, this is really cool, right?
Oh, they thought it was so strange. It came up the other day that
They probably think it's kind of like creepy in a way.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. They think it's very creepy. Like, how do I turn this off? Can anybody see this? Like, oh. But yeah, they were very interested in my European trip 6 months ago, and I was able to go to spring break and show them exactly what I did and where I went.
But you could even have kids map their route to school and home.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting as well.
Yeah.
Because they probably just sit there and don't even think about where they go.
Yeah, so that's actually also in English class. I was talking to Kristen Kovac, now Spade, who I believe you've had on the podcast before.
Yes.
We were talking about it just last night, and she was saying that they're doing this book called Scratch Beginnings. Mm-hmm. And the book opens, it's about this guy who's testing to see if the American dream is still alive. So he leaves home with $25 and a blanket or something.
Right.
And he shows up in Charleston, South Carolina on a train. So then the book traces his walk from the train station to the homeless shelter. And a lot happens. He has a lot of encounters with different people. Well, Kristen went through using Google Maps and traced his exact walk. So they would go to that street corner.
Yes.
And you drop your guy in there.
Yes.
And then you can do a 360 view of
yes.
what he saw.
And hold on. What she's talking about, there's a little yellow guy on the lower right-hand corner. Mm-hmm. You just pick him up by the arm and just drop him in, right?
And drop him in.
Yeah. And
so now Kristen, drops in the little yellow guy and says, that's where Adam met that homeless guy.
Wow.
That offered him crack or whatever it was in
the
story.
Right.
But and she said it really brought the story alive.
So in other words, if you're doing some research on the Kennedy assassination, you need to stick your kids in Dealey Plaza and let them look around. If you're talking about the Abraham Lincoln assassination, you need to stick your kids in the Ford Theater and let them take a look around.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent, man. And it doesn't stop in the United States. Have you had your kids go anywhere? Have you dropped them anywhere overseas?
Oh, yeah. So for the Cold War, I found this really useful because the Cold War, the setting of it can be really hard for the kids to grasp.
Yeah, right.
Because it's over 4 decades and it's everywhere.
Okay, now let me ask you something. Let's say that you go on your Google Maps and you type in 1965. Will it have a map of 1965, like East-West Germany, Soviet Union?
Google Earth will do that.
Okay.
I haven't seen that on Google Maps. That might be a thing, but whenever I try to do that, I usually go to Google Earth, which is also free. The kids can hop right on.
Right.
But with the Cold War, what I did is you can create your own map. So if you go back to that menu, drop down, go past the Your Timeline thing, and there's something called Your Places.
Yeah.
And then there's an option to create your own map. And so now the template is all of Google Maps, but you can type in the location, it takes you there, and then you can drop a pin and attach that pin. If you click it, you can change the icon itself to make it more relevant. You can give it a title, you give it a description, you can attach videos or images. And so what I had my kids do is every time we talked about a certain location, they would pull up their Google map, go to that location, pin it, and then put whatever information we learned right there. And also you can draw things. So they drew the Iron Curtain across Europe.
Wow.
And at the end of the unit, it was really neat for the kids to kind of zoom out and see all the different places that were impacted. And it served as a study guide for the test because everything we talked about was there.
Right.
And it also was kind of a neat artifact that they created through their learning, like a personal thing for them.
Wow. And so you really just started using this last year.
Oh, yeah.
Now, did you kind of learn about this last year as you went?
Yeah, the first time I used it was to plan a trip of my own. And I just happened upon it and was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then I had another student use it for his own trip to Italy, and then he did the same thing.
And then you were saying, I got to use this for all the kids.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
This is so cool.
That's awesome. Right after we get done recording, I'm going to make Quin Thomas show me how to do this. Okay, now, what I loved about it is you brought in the English class about our friend who teaches English, talked about the novel. But man, you could use this stuff in every class. I mean, a lot of people look at maps. That's something that you do in social studies. But if you're in science class and you're talking about anything that's going on anywhere in the world, think how powerful it would be to use Google Maps.
Mm-hmm. And another way I think you could use it in science or in math, I'm not sure about the curriculum, but I know in science, like in physics, those classic problems where it's like the train leaves Philadelphia at this time, what time will it arrive here, and another train, what time will they cross? Well, in Google Maps, they have a measuring tool to measure distance and like time, and so the kids could use that to then see how long would it take a train if it's going 45 miles. An hour to get there and then do that. And so, it's a really nifty thing where the kids can measure across the world using this little ruler.
It's kind of like the Easy Bib, what Easy Bib did for in-text citation.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to figure out those problems in science class and math class.
Yeah, and now it's just easy as click here, drag it, and click again.
Well, a lot of times I'm interviewing these folks for my podcast, and I can tell you that this is an interesting time because I'm going to make Quin Thomas hang out with me for 5 more minutes because she's got to show me some of these tools on Google Maps, and I'm going to use them on Monday. We're talking about China on Monday. I need to do something with Google Maps, with China.
100%.
On Monday. Thank you so much for coming in, man.
My pleasure.
So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. Number 1, go to my show notes, jamesallensturdivant.com. I've got a Google Doc there, and then you can see the instructions I gave my students on how to use Google Maps. You're free to make a copy and manipulate it however you want, but I'd start small. Something like mapping their route from home to school, just to get them accustomed to using Google Maps. Maybe have them attach an image, maybe have them open up another tab and then drop the little yellow guy down to do a little street view. Just have some fun with it. It's something to build on. Then after that, of course, you can be a little more elaborate, a little more sophisticated, have them find some more places. And then finally, think about this. And I'm going to try this tonight. I'm going to try to upload an image to Google Maps of my street. And the reason I'm going to do this is because the street view is from 2007. The creepy part is I think I was actually standing in the front yard when the Google truck went by. So I am going to try to upload an image to Google Maps, and that could be the other thing you could challenge your students to do. Go somewhere interesting and upload an image to Google Maps. I mean, this is so much better than looking at an old atlas. Go with the flow, work with Google Maps, and good luck tomorrow engaging your students.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesallensturdivant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.